screen, and I will walk you through this map. So I'll walk you through this in a moment and kind of demo the functionality of this referral map. Before I do that, I just want to let you know where this came from. So as Yvette shared earlier, Viva and my team at Viva, we are technical assistance providers for the Pathways program. And so we've been working with East LA FRC as well as the other unifying agencies in different communities in LA to support their Pathways work. And so part of that was to develop these referral resource and referral maps to really support each of those agencies and their partners to visualize what their current referral system looks like in their communities. And so we built this map using data that we requested from East LA FRC. Yvette and Martha provided us, and their team really provided us with all of the inputs that were required to create the map that I'll walk through in just a moment. And our vision and goal is really to support each of the agencies in Pathways to use this visualization in any way that would be supportive to their Pathways work, but also I really want to highlight that this is meant to be a living map that can be updated on an ongoing basis. And so as the referral pathways and resources change in the community, we can also update the map so that you can kind of track the changes in your community and see how they're shifting over time as different approaches are implemented, such as implementing the 1 degree program. So with that, I will let you know what you're looking at here. So I'll walk from left to right. And so what this is meant to show is the way referrals happen in the East LA community. So on the left-hand side, we have families entering the system, and then we have arrows from those families to what have been identified as typical points of entry for families in the EII system in East LA. And so you can see there are quite a few different points of entry that are possible, or that families tend to enter the system in. Each of the circles represents a different type of partner. So for example, at the top here, we have social service or organizations or public health organizations. Below them, we have family resource centers, regional centers, families entering through self-referral, early learning and care providers, school districts, and primary care providers. If you want to learn more about each of those provider types, or partner types, I should say, you can hover your cursor over the map and it will tell you a bit more. So it will tell you the approximate percentage of all referrals made by this partner type, and that is reflected in the size of the circle. So just from a quick glance, you can see regional centers really make a large number of the referrals in the current system. Then you can see the number of partners of this partner type that are in the Pathways system or the Pathways network. And then if you would like to see a list of those partners and a little bit more about them, if you double click on the circle itself, it will take you to a Google sheet with the relevant partners listed, with a bit more information listed for each of them. I'll give you another example, since there's only one regional center, but there are some lists that are a bit longer. So if we looked at social service organizations or public health and double clicked there, you could see that when my cursor was over the circle, it also told you that information about number of referrals and things like that. And then when I double clicked, here is a list of social service organizations. Now, when I return to the screen, I see there are some questions, but I think that some of them, or most of them maybe, are referring to the question.
Yeah, so you have one from Lisa, Katie, that says, which circle would mental health fall in? Or is it referred via mental health provider?
Yeah, good question. So I believe that would fall under specialist, but we have in the data collection template more of a description of what qualifies as specialists. We did our very best to keep the number of circles as low as possible while also being as descriptive as possible. What that meant was that we had this broader bucket for specialists, which encompassed physical therapists, as well as mental health providers, occupational therapists, and that let me see if my cursor tells us that is something that we can add to the information that pops up when you put your cursor over the circle, so that that's more clear. And that's actually a good question that kind of will help us to make this map more informational and useful. What I'll do now is kind of explain a little bit more about the functionality, because there's a lot packed in here. And so one thing that you may notice is that there are arrows between different organization or partner types. And so those arrows represent referral pathways. So right now you can see a few. So from family resource centers to regional centers, when you hover over that or put your cursor over that, you'll see how common the referral is, or the frequency of referral. So in this case, it is common. And then in case it's hard to see, it will tell you which type of organization or partner the referral is from and to. And you can see when I move my cursor over here, again, it's a common referral, but it's showing the relationship or the referral pathway from regional centers specifically to family resource centers. Right now, there's also a couple of buckets or types of providers that are kind of hanging out here on their own. And that's because of the filters at the top. And so you may notice that we have the typical point of entry and kind of the darker font, and the common referrals in darker font here. These along the top here are filters that you can use to explore the different frequencies of referrals. So if I go ahead and click through, it's now going to show me somewhat common referrals. And then if I keep going, it will show me very uncommon referrals. And then even further shows me the referral pathways that East LA, when they completed the data template that we requested, didn't know about. And so now you can see it becomes a much more complex map. And it really includes different frequencies of referrals, of course, as well as the pathways that East LA doesn't know quite about the frequency of referral yet. So here, here's where the hovering over can really be helpful, because there are so many lines. So here you can see, for example, referrals from family resource centers to legal aid agencies are noted as very uncommon. This is, I show this to demonstrate that there are a lot of different ways that you can use these filters to answer questions that are most relevant for your collaborative and for your partnership. So for example, you might want to start by only showing the do not know and saying, okay, which referral pathways do we need to learn more about? Before we can do anything, before we can take any next steps, do we need to better understand any of the relationships between these partners? And kind of maybe call some partners or figure out what is the relationship? How common is a referral between legal aid agencies and research institutions, for example, or between research institutions and school districts? Or maybe you'll say, you know, we really want to hone in on the very uncommon referrals and determine which of those we want to prioritize to ensure that they become more common. So if we do that, we can highlight the very uncommon and say, okay, there's quite a few that are very uncommon. Which of these do we really want to, again, focus on and work on taking to the next level so that they become more common and that those relationships and the referral pathways are strengthened. So it might be from school districts to family resource centers, for example, or maybe from family resource centers to primary care providers. And that, of course, would be a discussion that happens within the partnership and within the collaboratives, maybe also bringing in some of the specific partner types that are represented by the circles in the map. Again, maybe a good place to start is somewhat common, because there are fewer there, but if you can get those somewhat common to common, it will really strengthen your network and the referrals that are happening between partners. So that's kind of the overview of how to use these referral filters. The last thing I'll demonstrate before diving into questions and sending you the link for you to explore on your own is just how to use the filters for the organization or partner types themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and select common, somewhat common, and very uncommon. And let's say, for example, that in East LA, you're really interested in understanding the referral pathways from early learning and care providers. So if that's the case, you would select in the left hand, up in the top left, it says early learning and care. And when I do that, it shows just the early learning and care providers here at the bottom left. Now you might want to say, okay, so what is the relationship between early learning and care providers and families through self-referral? Okay, so you can see that it's a very uncommon, but there is some presence of families self-referring themselves to early learning and care providers. Then maybe you want to see what's the relationship between family resource centers. Okay, again, very uncommon, but there's a relationship in both directions, from early learning and care providers to family resource centers, and then from early learning and care providers, and then from family resource centers to early learning and care providers. And you can kind of go down the line and see, okay, what do these relationships look like? How does this one type of organization or this one type of partner fit into the ecosystem of referrals in our community? I'm gonna go ahead and stop talking for a minute and let the map.
Can you select regionals for that? Could you select regional center and primary care?
Sure. Primary care.
Right next to regional center.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so yeah, I'm seeing nothing show up. Oh, that's because I unselected.
Well,
okay.
Yeah, it's actually, we don't know. Yeah. And so we may not have coded that right. So I think a lot of, I think actually this is probably the most frequent, other than family self-referral. I think Enrico said she had to leave, so I don't know if other regional center folks are there. But this is an example of some cleanup that we want to do too. So we need members on that work group that know more about the commonality of referrals, so that we make sure we're working on the right things, and that we're actually making some change, the right change.
Yeah, definitely. Again, and that's a really good example, Yvette, of kind of within your collaborative and within your partnerships, really identifying where's the right place to start, because there is a lot that you can discuss, a lot of rabbit holes you can go down with this map and with the visualization. So it sounds like the first step might be to identify where are the gaps in information, so that the map can be truly reflective of where the network is right now. And then taking it from there, once you have a more accurate picture, to then facilitate discussions about, okay, so now that we have this picture, what are our next steps? Where are we going to focus our energy this year? Which referral pathways should we really invest in building out and strengthening first, and then take it to the next step after you've done that. And I just sent the link to the map into the chat. You are free to play around with it and kind of see what comes up for you. You will not break the map or upset the code or anything like that. So you're, free to play around, and also Yvette and Martha, of course, to share with whoever you'd like to see it.
Thank you, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions for Katie?
I don't see no questions in the chat.
Okay. From my experience, even building these maps, it can be a lot. So I definitely, recommend that as you continue to engage in this work, spending a bit of time, really digging into what's already in the map and identifying where the gaps are, as that you kind of highlighted. And then of course, I'm happy to answer questions as you do so, and also to support you once you gather that additional information to then update the map so that it reflects your current network and partnership.
And the work group may end up having some questions for you, Katie, as the work group may end up having some questions for you, as they kind of dig into it and try to make use of it.
Yeah, and I'm definitely happy to plug in and answer as they go. So definitely just let me know.
All right. Thank you, Katie. If we don't have any other questions for Katie, we'll go back to our PowerPoint. Martha?
Great.